Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Automating Alert Triage to Improve SOC Performance. My name is Chris Beltoff. I'm a member of the product team here at Devo and the host for the webinar. Just a couple of information points before I introduce the presenters that I want to go through. On your screen are multiple tools you can use during the webinar, including a Q&A chat window. And below the slide view, there's a blue box which gives you a link to start your free trial of Devo SOAR. All the windows are resizable and movable. Feel free to adjust them to suit whatever works best for you. The slide view window you can expand, or you can even maximize it if you want to full screen by clicking in the top right corner. If you have any technical questions, you can find some answers to them in the help tool at the bottom of the screen. Any questions you ask during the webcast, you submit through the Q&A chat screen. We'll do our best to answer them. The attendees, you're all muted, so please type your questions in the Q&A chat window. If there's not enough time to answer your questions or a fuller answer is needed, we will follow up with you. And this webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording. So with that, let me introduce our presenters today. Kumar Sarab is the Vice President of SOAR Integration and Strategy at Devo. Devo is a cybersecurity company that provides an advanced cloud-native logging and security analytics platform. And Kumar is joined by Hugo Saavedra, who's the Manager of Cyber Threat Intelligence at Secure, which is one of the largest managed security service providers in Latin America. So let me now hand it over to you, Kumar.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Let me see if I can switch to the next slide here, right? And let's go to, so I think one of the things, alert fatigue as a concept is pretty prevalent, and almost any security team, any security practitioner that has worked in security operations center side of things or detection and response is quite familiar with this. And one of the things that we still see is smaller teams, right? We work with teams that are 20, 30, 100 plus people on the security operations side. And we also work with security operations teams that are just 2 or 3 people in size, dedicated analysts, right? And typically what you find is that the amount of alerts that they can actually investigate is typically much more than 5, 10, and sometimes even 20x more than what they can actually go through. And so the result, what happens is some very well-funded security teams will constantly be striving to add more people to the team, whereas the smaller teams that are more constrained in terms of headcount have no other option than to ignore 80, 90% of the alerts, right? So for many of the security practitioners, this is just a fact of life. And I think one of the things that we have observed, right, over the last several years, Chris, let me do a quick check. Can you hear my audio?
Yes.
Okay. It seems like at least Hugo can hear me, so I think the audio challenges might be related to one of the audience members in there. But good to do a quick check before we go much farther along. Right.
Yes,
so
if you are having trouble with audio, this is Chris, just quickly, if you're having trouble with audio, just check on your side, because I believe we are broadcasting properly.
Cool. Awesome. So one of the things, some of the common problems that we find, and we'll talk about this, is one of the big problems is just the signal to noise ratio and the false positive rates. And you can look at 20 alerts that are all relating to the similar thing, but you cannot update the context very easily and deal with the a huge volume of alerts that might be of much lower quality, right? And so one thing that we have found, especially in the last 3-4 years, is applying security automation it helps a lot with this problem and makes this much better and makes the security teams much more efficient. And that is what we're going to kind of look at in much more detail today. But I think in order to actually get a handle on this, right, you have to take a systematic approach, take a little bit of a more mature approach to the process and how we achieve this. And after having worked with several teams over the last 4+ years, on tackling this problem of alert triage, one of the things that I encourage, right, there are certain steps that you can follow. First of all, right, very common saying, measure what you want to improve, right? And so you start out by defining, what are the key metrics that you want to improve. Try measuring them. And one of the quickest ones, for example, I look at the escalation rates. Okay, we got 2,000 alerts in the last month, let's say, or bigger companies can get 2,000 alerts in a single day. No matter which case you are in, you can actually look at the alerts and have you instrumented the system to figure out which alerts are noisy, which are not, right? If you're not capturing the data, and you don't have to collect this data on all 2,000 alerts, right? If you're a small team, one of the exercises I suggest, just pick a random set of 30 or 50 alerts and spend an hour, and you'll be surprised how many of those alerts that you're getting, you'll find like 80, 90% of them would be, there was no action to be taken there, right? And so figure out which of the alerts are really noisy and make that part of the process and start calculating those numbers. One of the great advantage of calculating that number and instrumenting your process to gather the data is you can figure out which alerts are very noisy. And I'll share some of the data that we found in our own internal SOC a little bit further down the road. But once you get the data, you can prioritize all the different alerts. And in many companies, we find there might be 300, 400 different kind of alerts, but the top 10 account for a vast majority of it. And those are the ones, and typically the first 2 or 3, you can eliminate them very, very quickly because the analysts already know what to do about that. And now going to the third step is when the analysts know what to do about that, many teams struggle to translate the tribal knowledge. The senior analyst knows what to do, but the best practices are not codified. So before you can automate anything, a prerequisite almost would be, can you codify it? Can you write a one-pager, put it on a wiki, put it in a Google Doc, put it somewhere that is accessible to the team, and written in just pure English. Don't even try to automate it. Because if you can't write it as a playbook, then the automation will be even harder, if not impossible, to do that. And again, because we're trying to improve the metrics, you want to have a system that is giving you those metrics on a day-to-day basis, and you're instrumenting the process to give you the metrics. And then as you go and automate playbooks one by one, what we typically see, you'll start seeing those metrics improve. And maybe it will improve for 10, 20% of the alerts that you tackle in the first month or 2. But then as you stick with it for a year or a couple of years, right, you'll see that 80 to 90% of the alerts that the team had to do is now much of that work is being done by automation. So this is a pretty common sense approach, but also a very systematic approach to get benefits and tackle this problem. And when it comes to alert triage, right, a lot of teams spend a lot of time going through those alerts and doing it manually. And in our experience, what we have seen is as much as 80, 90% of the work, of the time that is being spent, can be fully automated. And many times, and some of the more mature teams have gone through, and for a variety of playbooks, we have one customer that has 100 plus playbooks running in production today. And most of those playbooks are auto-adjudicating the alerts. In other words, they are deciding which of the alerts are false positives and which ones the team really needs to look at. And their number is 95% plus of the alerts that they generate. The team of analysts never has to look at those because they go in and these playbooks go through every single alert that comes through the door. And 95% of them automatically gets enriched, triaged, almost like a virtual person has worked through that. And obviously, they have spent more than a couple of years investing in automation to get to that point where they can eliminate 95% of the alerts without any human involvement. But that's very, very doable, and we have seen many companies do that. And this is a quick screenshot. Actually, we have taken it from our internal SOC. So when Devo acquired Logic Hub, the SOAR platform, one of the first things that we did is we didn't have a SOAR platform in our internal SOC, and our internal SOC is small. So we went ahead and implemented this, and what you're seeing in here, we used to get 2,000 alerts in 7 days or so, and only 50 of them would actually get looked at. And so a vast majority of it never got looked at. And so what we did is, in 2 to 3 weeks of work, we were able to cull that down to 66 cases that analyst had to look at manually, right? And so, and this is not even the best that we can do. I think that work is ongoing. That number can easily be cut in half, if not more, as we invest more in our own internal SOC and internal automation there. The other part that I want to highlight, right? So it's great that you can eliminate 95% of the alerts, but people want to know, right? For the things that you say is a false positive, nobody needs to look at it. People want to know, why do you think it's a false positive, right? So that's an enrichment. How can, even if you make the decision accurately, you need to be able to explain it. The bot, the automation needs to be able to explain to a SOC analyst who is reviewing the work now to say, yes, the decision was made in the right way. Here are all the factors, here all the reasons that it is done. And for the things that it actually thinks are high priority and really where an action needs to be taken, not only you need to have the context to describe why it is considered a high priority and why a real human analyst should spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes looking at it, but then now begins the process of response, right? What do I do? And that's also the phase that you can actually automate. So enrichment can be automated, triage can be automated, but you can also automate the response. Now, the moment we talk about automating response, a lot of people get a little bit iffy, a little bit scared. It's like, I don't accidentally want to lock out, some key executives for whatever reason, or half the company because I made a mistake. And that is the place where what we have is what we call a one-click automation. In other words, right? And I'm showing you a screenshot of a real case that was fired by an alert, right? So we just got one single alert from AWS. Right? And we went in and looked at all the CloudTrail logs, all the VPC flow logs we're collecting, and we're able to enrich it. And we're able to look across different systems and say, here are the reasons why we think it's really either high priority or low priority things. But for everyone, and you're seeing under those tasks, you can actually automate tasks, and you can choose whether to run. Like if the task is like send an email, there is very little, downstream effect, very little negative effect. Those are the things you can automate and automatically take. So by the time the analyst comes and looks at this case, some of these actions have already been taken. But let's say if you're changing a security group to block out an IP address or something like that, that could have a pretty severe side effect, right? Those are the things that you can make one-click automation, where analyst looks at all the evidence, but without having to do it manually, which might take just context switching, logging into your AWS console, or using other tools to do it. You can simply, from the case page, click a button, and the rest of the process is automated. Not only it makes it consistent, but it also avoids the chances of a human error further down the road, right? So it gives you the best of both worlds. 99% of the work gets automated, but you have human in the loop. So it's the person is a security analyst or an incident responder that's going in and making the call. Yes, we are going to change the security group, or we are going to add this to a blacklist and whatnot. So this is a very important feature, and this speaks a little bit to the power of using case management. Many teams that might have a SIM and then start looking at SOAR, what I have found, especially smaller teams and a little bit less mature teams, are doing a lot of this context gathering and all of these things over emails. And that information is very distributed. There isn't a consistent playbook around it. So there are a lot of downsides of not using a case management system. Furthermore, if the case management system works a lot with automation, then you're getting even a super-powered, supercharged case management, because vanilla case management, 100% of the work or 90% of the work is being done by the human analyst. But case management is a key piece of SOAR. But one way that case management piece is very different than vanilla case management is you can heavy focus on automation and trying to do 90% of the work or 95% of the work with automation, and elevating the security analyst more as a supervisor of automation and doing the high-level decision-making and action-taking rather than spending 10, 20 minutes jumping between a variety of tools. And this is an example of one simple action. And you can actually build any and all. And we have people who take 15, 20 different actions, many of them automatically, some of them with one-click automation, and some of them just manually invoke or even assign it to people. But this is an example of how you can build case templates, and you can decide not only what you saw in what you need in terms of context, but you can actually give the analyst guidance on what are the actions that should and could be taken once they're in the response phase. And I want to kind of wrap this up with one very interesting anecdote, right? I took that funnel screenshot after 2-3 weeks of implementing 2-3 playbooks, and we saw a heavy amount of reduction. And this is where analyzing your alert type and kind of trying to figure out which are the most noisy alerts pays off quite a bit. Such a simple exercise. This is literally, even when we started working with NeoSecure 2+ years ago, I remember that is an exercise that we did was, okay, let's look at all the alerts you get. Let's sort them by the ones that show up at the highest. And that is always a good and place to start. And in our SOC, I was actually very pleasantly surprised that if we just automated 10 playbooks, we could actually eliminate 98% of the alerts we get. So rather than getting 2,000 alerts in a week, we would be down to like 40 or so alerts and cases in a single week. So massive amount of reduction can actually take place with this. So what I'm going to do, so that is what I presented was really all across what I've seen across different customers. But what I want to hand it off to Hugo, and I work with Hugo very closely, but a very real-world application of SOAR to problems in SOC. So off to you, Hugo.
Thank you, Kumar. Just checking if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting. I think that, we have a lot of common in our SOC. That the last slide is very familiar to me because we have the same exercise, and I think that we find the same number, right? Okay. Let's start. It's only to review some background about NeoSecure and our history here in Latin America, so we can know the main challenges that we have. Okay, 20 years ago, when we have started with our SOC, we were the only monitoring IDSs and firewalls of some banks and financial institutions here in Latin America. And over time, we have grown a lot. And today we are open to many different kind of industries, like the health industry, mining companies, insurance, and others, right? Also, we have opened the to other technologies that we need to monitor. We also have partnerships partnerships with a lot of brands, and we are monitoring these devices with our CM, and we are doing a lot of alert triage, right? So we have a wide variety of technologies to monitor. Another important requirement for our customers are the customized escalations and protocols, right? The response protocols are different from customers. For example, one customer wants us to call in the nights. If we find, for example, an anomaly in the alerts, but other customers just want to be notified, right? They don't want a call in the night or in the weekend. Another thing that here in Latin America, in the I think the last 5 years, we have a lot of competitors and new customers that are asking for services, for managed services at lower prices, right? And the last one, but not the least, we have a hard time finding analysts. That is a key problem here for Latin America. And also, nobody wants to work in 7/24 shifts, right? I think that it's familiar to you, Kumar, also. I think that the whole industry, the whole cybersecurity industry is having the same problems, right? Okay. I want to present 2 use cases to present what our experience with Devo. Here we have 2 use cases. The left one, the phishing trail log, it's one of our easiest use cases that we have implemented. We have several customers with solutions that we call the for email security. It's a cloud-based solution that you need to pass all the emails to that cloud solution. It's a kind of laundry service, right? And the problem here is the phishings that get evaluated as false negatives, or what we call the gray emails, right? Gets into the end user inbox, okay? And the service has a guarantee that nobody wants to open that emails, right? The idea is to include human analysis for that kind of emails, and we need to know when we have a customer that has this kind of emails, right? So the solution here is automating the process, reading the log, reading the log from this cloud solution, right? The second use case is the same as Kumar says. The similar triage is the typical one, but we have here a different scenario that I want to tell about after this slide, right? This use case is likely to be familiar to the world's cybersecurity industry, because it's taking a lot of problems, right? We're having a lot of alerts, and there is no time to analyze all of them properly, right? As Kumar says before. Also, for security providers, for managed services, if you grow, sooner or later you will face this problem, right? You will have to commit for these strict SLAs. For example, today we have 45 minutes of SLAs for alerts, more than 400 use cases and customization for our customer, more than 100 different ways to react. For example, if only want to notify to one customer, or we need to call him, for example, we need authorization to respond, for example, to block some traffic, etc. There are different combinations, right? So it's a lot of problem to solve. And if you do a simple math, 5 minutes per analysis, and you have 1,000 alerts per day, you need a lot of hours, a lot of man hours to have that. Okay. Okay. So for the feature trail log, what we do with Devo, it's read or pull the email trail log from ForAI Cloud, right? It's very simple. The idea was to read that trail log, do some enrichment, do the manual steps that the analysts are doing before that, that automation, and to pull some enrichment, for example, with virus total on the typical ones, virus total, abuse IP, and other ones. That simple steps, and also the triage of this information, right, are created as a ticket inside our ticket platform, right? So the advantages of this is that the analyst, there is no need for connecting the console of ForAI to manually triage these alerts, right? And we can do instead in our ticket platform. It's more easy to that. And when we find, for example, the evaluation of these emails as true positives after the human analysis, we can delete to the email inside the email box of these users, and also mark these emails as bad in the ForAI platform. That is the main idea for this. With that, we have a faster phishing triage, a faster SLA with our customers, and we don't need to enter the console of ForAI. That is the main goals of this playbook. It's very simple, but we have that benefits, right? The next one. Oh, sorry. Sorry, it's a bad title here. This one is the alert triage playbook, and the idea here is this is our biggest use case. It takes, I think, 1 year to have implemented Kumar, maybe. And the idea is, in fact, it's our main use case. Okay, and it was not easy because we have a hybrid services with our customers. For example, we have multi-tenant CMs and our on-prem managed CMs. We have a hybrid infrastructure here of CMs. So the key to solve this part is the Logic Hub, or Devo now, the Devo remote agent, right? The remote agents help us to connect the customer CMs that we have on premises, and our own CMs that we have with multi-tenant services, right? Another key aspect here is the volume of alerts are different. If you know, we have different kind of customers. For example, we have mining companies that they have a lot of alerts, and other customers from, for example, the financial institutions, they have a lot of alerts, and we have other customers that are smaller, and we don't have, for example, an alert maybe in 2 or 3 days. So they are different in volume, and you need to manage that problem also. Okay, so let's review some simple steps here for this use case. The first one, the Devo SOAR needs to pull the alerts from the local and remote SIEMs, right? This pulling is like a cron. It's a cron job that is pulling all alerts from the SIEMs. And the use case for that, the enrichment information is pulled from our CMDB. Our CMDB has all of the queries that we need to execute back to the CMs to have the context of the alerts, right? You need context to be presented to the analyst, so they can make a decision or make the triage, right? That drill down queries are executed, and the results are put it back in the ticketed system with the information of the customer, the protocols also for that customer, so the analyst doesn't need to make to enter that system to know if you have special instruction, for example, for the analyst to escalate to the customer, or to, for example, to apply some response action in the devices, right? All that information is in the ticket system, right? What more? The alert information is aggregated using top-like tables, and also the payload of the alerts are inside the tickets. The ticket is created, and the notification is sent for the customer by email, right? That is our main playbook for this use case. What are the benefits or the outcomes of implementing this with Devo? That if you see here, we have automated the whole category of low severity alerts. It's no more touched by the analyst. They are sent to the customers directly, right? And also some customer that doesn't want to have that alerts because there is no risk there, right? Some customers wants all the alerts for, I don't know, for compliance things, and we need to notify them the wall alerts, right? Medium severity and high severity alerts are also analyzed inside the ticketing system, so we don't need to enter to every console to get that information. That is the other advantage of doing that. Also, we have lower MTTRs, as Kumar says before. You have more man hours to analyze correctly, and also that is important because with more time, right? You can do better analysis of critical alerts and high severity alerts. That's are the main use cases, right? So, Kumar, I don't know if you have any comments here. I have.
I think this is, Hugo, this is a very, I mean, one, it's very broad application, right? Because it is applicable to literally hundreds and thousands of different kind of alerts across all different customers, across different SIMs connecting. But I was also, I was also kind of impressed with the depth. And this playbook, and I've seen, versions of it, over several months, and it's like a 300 different steps that you're doing. I mean, there are pieces and modules built for flood control. You suddenly get a spike of like 300 alerts, right? And if a team of human analysts was looking at it, the SLA would just go. And so what is a strategy that you can apply in those situations? So you can think through all of those things, right? And you can codify, like, okay, this is the strategy I want to implement. And you basically automate this. And the ticketing system, right? Even though we have within the SOAR, there is a ticketing system itself. One of the key things here was that NeoSecure was already using a ticketing system, and we're able to build integrations with the ticketing system and kind of update that. We can go back to QRadar, and you can actually, the SIM side of things, and various different SIMs, and you can actually add notes to these offenses that get created and so on. So just the depth of that playbook was also, when I went and reviewed with the engineers that were working on it, I was pretty impressed, is not just the breadth, but also the depth that you can do. And it kind of leads to, some of the use cases can be fairly 10, 20 steps, but you can also find some pretty deep playbooks that can be 10 times, 20 times bigger. And it really depends on the use cases and so on. So I think this is probably a good point to pause and kind of hand it off to Chris, see if we have any questions that we want to tackle before we wrap up.
Yes, and thank you both, Kumar and Hugo, for the information so far. There are a couple of questions, and I'll raise them to both of you, and you can decide who wants to answer. First one is a question, what would be your advice for a security team that would help them with a successful implementation of SOAR? Some best practice advice.
Yes, that is a very good question. For NeoSecure, I think that in the initial phase of the project, we have a pressure to automate tasks as soon as possible, right? The idea is to generate the outcomes as soon as possible, also because you are paying for that service, right? But I think that it's very good to start analyzing where you can have the savings, the savings, right? As Kumar says before, what we have done in the first phase is to analyze our alerts, right? Make the aggregation of that. Analyze, for example, the last 3 months, the last 6 months, 1 year of alerts, because you're changing, right? So the idea is to group, for example, these alerts, to understand where is the effort, right, of analysis. If you don't do that, you don't have data for analysis, for example, for doing that, maybe you will have, and with I don't know, no returning, no accounts of the project, right? I think that it's a key part, right? Another thing, I think the idea is to, for example, not to start automating things or processes that you don't have documented, because maybe you can be wrong of task, for example, that no people is executing, right? The idea is to have all this list and analyze what requirements do you need. For example, the integrations is a key part. If you need to integrate for the ticket system, or today we use, for example, QRadar as a CM. If you need to integrate with other CMs, you need to know if, in this case, Devo has already that integration out of the box, right? In our case, for example, we have near or maybe proprietary ticketing system. It's an open source ticketing system. Devo doesn't have that integration, but I think we have the integration about 2 or 3 weeks after we have the requirement list, right? That maybe is a good advice to have all the integrations that you need inside the platform, right? Also, maybe you will have some or experience some change resistance from the people of the SOC. I think that this is a natural response, because they are humans. So if they see that they work, maybe they see the SOAR as a threat, right, for his work. So it's very important that the automation process or the priorities are socialized with the SOC team, so they can contribute to the success of the project. That are my main advices.
Excellent. Thank you, Hugo. Another question I'll address to you, Kumar, and then Hugo, you can answer as well. Question is, how can I justify the value of SOAR to the business folks inside my company?
That's a great question, and something that everybody has to kind of go through before they can invest in a SOAR platform. And quite honestly, one of the things that I would encourage people to think about and be realistic about is it's not just what you pay in terms of buying the tool or the platform, but you have to actually also factor in the cost of implementation, right? So whether you are doing that implementation because you have a full-time or a part-time engineer dedicated to automation within the company, or you're using services to do it, right? So you want to be, I have talked to several teams that did not account for the latter part, right? And were constrained by that in terms of how much value they get out of the platform. But going back to the question, so one, you figure out you have a realistic estimate of what it will take to get the results, right? And I have seen that there are two key flavors or two key outcomes or successes or results people get out of this. One is sheer time savings, and I think the calculation that Hugo was doing, right? Think of it, like, even if every alert takes 5 minutes to, again, it's 300 steps. Even if you boil it down to 30 steps, it might easily take 5 minutes to do that work manually. And you get 2,000 of them. That's like 10,000 minutes is like 160 hours in a day. And if you have a person doing 8 hours of work, that's like 20 man hours, a 20-person team you'd need to get the same, to do the same work manually. That's a humongous amount of cost saving. right? And so that's one way that you can do. But the other part really is related to quality of service, right? So, and under quality of service, you can look at, we talked about one of the metrics, right? MTTR. So many teams that we work with, right, have SLAs or SLOs, service level agreements or objectives, right? Sometimes within larger companies where they are serving internal audiences, they might not have a strict SLA, but they have an SLO. They want to respond to, critical alerts within 10 minutes, high priority within 20 minutes, and the medium priority within 45 or an hour. And we have seen teams that even with like 50% in security operations were missing their SLOs. One of the companies that we worked through 3-4 years ago was missing it 70% of the time, right? And what we saw over 1 year, they went from missing it 70% of the time to very, very rarely missing it, right? But it takes that work. So MTTR is a very and we also have worked with teams that are probably too small. They don't know how to measure MTTR. And that is one of the side benefits of implementing something like SOAR or having a system in place that gives you the data to put those metrics and say, okay, here, the second benefit on the quality side of things is consistency, right? And consistency is like you're getting the same high quality. Yes, it takes investment to automate it, but after you have automated it, you start seeing very rich, high quality information. And it's a living and breathing thing, right? And several times we implement a playbook and the V1 gets implemented in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? But then it gradually over the year or so, it keeps getting better and better, because every time someone thinks, oh, I need this additional bit of information, instead of training a team of people and trying to make sure that all 5 analysts or all 20 analysts know the best practices, a much easier path is to actually put that part in automation, and it's being done automatically. And you're using people for the more high level, more trickier decisions that has to be made in the last 5 minutes or the last 2 minutes, and they focus there. So these are the advantages. One, cost reduction, but the second one is just security excellence, operational excellence, whether you measure it by MTTR, by consistency, those are the things actually improve quite a bit.
Great, thank you, Kumar. I believe we'll have time for one more question. I'll go back to you, Hugo. It's a question about using scripts. What kind of challenges did you used to face when doing this kind of work with the scripts?
Yeah. In the past, we are working with scripts. We have experience with that. It's a very good question, because I think the industry have skills to write scripts, right? We have in the mind all the engineers, I think, how to automate this work with the scripts, right? It's not bad. It's very good. But we know that in scripting, right, when someone writes some script and leads the company, we have a problem with that script, because the people who write leaves, and you know how he's writing, right? That's a problem. Other problem that we have for this use case, for example, with alert triage or another cases, is that you don't have the visibility or control of the processing, right? You don't know if this is working fine. You don't know, for example, how many alerts are processed, or if you're doing right or is failing this script, right? Another thing, I think that if you need larger visibility, for example, in our cases, for example, if you have a lot of CMs, right? You need to maybe to have some metrics there. And in the scripting, you will have more difficult to write these things, right? What other things? I think that if you can see the requirements of this SOAR, you will find that the SOAR is in the case of Devo has a lot of visibility and control of how alerts are processed, right? You can review things in real time, also review the specific information. For example, if one of the integrations are failing, you will have that information. If you have, for example, I don't know, delays, you will find the specific information to dig deeper and find the root cause, right? I think that with scripting, it's a lot of efforts to do the same. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Great. So let me close the webinar up. Thank you again, Kumar and Hugo, for presenting, and thank all of you for attending the webinar, the Automating Alert Triage to Improve SOC Performance. You'll receive a follow-up email with a link to view the webinar. And on behalf of our presenters and Devo, I just wish you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.